March 9, 1984. The Easton City Archives smelled of brittle parchment and varnished oak. Late afternoon, sunlight filtered through the tall, arched windows, revealing a slow snowfall of dust drifting. Between the shelves, Daniel Mercer checked in returned manuscripts with steady, almost meditative rhythm. Each thump of the stamp echoed through the hushed room like a heartbeat marking another uneventful Friday. Dear viewers, before we begin, let me remind you, our channel's mission is to reach 1,000 subscribers, and your support gets us closer every day. You'll find Cold War stories here that aren't told anywhere else. He placed another book on the pile just as a visitor stepped to the counter. At 3:12 p.m., an elderly man approached him, Professor Harold Kinley, retired linguistics expert, a regular patron whose tweed coat always carried the scent of pipe tobacco. He placed two rare language dictionaries on the counter and asked a simple question. When did the Cyrillic reform abolish the yat character? Without hesitation, Daniel supplied the answer: 1918, during the Bolshevik orthographic modernization. Precise answer. A little too precise. Professor Kinley's eyes narrowed. He nodded politely, took his books and walked away, but he kept glancing back at Daniel, almost studying him. The entire exchange lasted less than a minute. When the professor stepped outside, the winter wind tugging at his coat, Daniel suddenly felt a chill tighten across his chest. He hadn't thought about the answer. He hadn't searched for it. He had remembered it instinctively, and no American-born archivist should know that detail so fluently. That night, in his dimly lit study lined with old maps, Kinley stared at his rotary phone for several minutes before finally dialing a number he had hoped never to use again. He once decoded intercepted Eastern Bloc transmissions for the U.S. government. He knew the kind of person who answered casually about pre-revolution Russian linguistics, and what that might mean. The man who picked up was an agent with the Intelligence Security Bureau. Their conversation lasted exactly 7 minutes. When Kinley hung up, he sat in silence, wondering if he had just condemned an innocent clerk or exposed something buried far deeper. Daniel Mercer's life had always seemed textbook ordinary. He'd arrived in Easton 8 years earlier, fresh degree, modest savings, a quiet smile that made neighbors describe him as polite but distant. He rented a small apartment above a bakery. Every morning, he bought the same black coffee and blueberry muffin. He attended community meetings, donated to the local animal shelter, and read novels alone. At a diner booth every Saturday night, co-workers called him dependable. No vacations, no unexpected absences, no close friends, perfect nobody, which, in the world of counterintelligence, was often the perfect somebody. 2 days after Kinley's call, Agent Laura Hensley, new to the Bureau, began reviewing Mercer's background file. Everything looked clean, but too clean. He had excellent grades from a small college, but none of the professors she contacted remembered him. His parents supposedly died in a house fire, but public records from their town contained vague gaps and contradictory details. Even the neighbors from his supposed childhood street had trouble recalling what the family looked like. Something felt rehearsed. Surveillance began quietly. For 2 weeks, Mercer behaved with robotic consistency. 7:04 a.m., leaves home. 8:01 a.m., arrives at archives. 12 p.m., lunch, same park bench, same sandwich. 5:06 p.m., leaves work. 8:15 p.m., nightly walk along the Riverside Trail. Everything perfectly predictable. Until March 29th. That night, Mercer left his apartment with unusual urgency, walked 6 blocks and entered an abandoned phone booth behind a boarded-up pharmacy. He spoke for exactly 3 minutes. No more, no less. He checked his watch twice. Pattern began. Every Thursday night. Always a public phone. Always 3 minutes. Financial analysis revealed another crack. Small cash deposits, always under reporting limits, appeared every month at different banks. Amounts varied but timing didn't. End of each month. No employer. No explanation. And the deposits dated back 7 years. April 11, 1984. Dawn broke quietly over Willow Ridge Nature Reserve. Unmarked bureau cars waited among the trees. Mercer jogged through the trail, a behavior he'd never shown before. Agents watched him pause beside a fallen birch tree, kneel, and pretend to tie his shoe. His hand slipped beneath the rotting trunk for barely 5 seconds. When the area was clear, Agent Hensley approached. Inside the hollow was a waterproof capsule. Inside the capsule, film strips containing photos of restricted military memos and diplomatic cables. Someone high-ranking was feeding Mercer information. The Bureau exchanged the real film with engineered misinformation trap intel meant to expose whoever received it. Now they waited. The source revealed himself faster than expected. A mid-tier defense analyst named Graham Lutz had been living a lifestyle far beyond his government salary. He gambled heavily, owed dangerous debts, and seemed to mysteriously recover from financial trouble at the exact times Mercer made his deposits. Surveillance caught Lutz photographing classified documents at his office after hours. His hands shook. He wasn't clever, just desperate. But Mercer was something else entirely. The handler came next, a diplomat from the East Syndicate, operating under cultural attaché cover, Mikhail Sidorov. Surveillance caught him accidentally, dropping a silver mechanical pencil in a museum gallery. Mercer retrieved it moments later. Inside the pencil was the altered microfilm planted by the Bureau. The trap had sprung. July 2, 1984. Agents moved in. Mercer was taken at dawn. He offered no resistance. No surprise. He simply said, it was inevitable. His apartment revealed multiple passports, a shortwave receiver, cipher pads, $40,000 in cash, a meticulously organized stash of survival gear. Everything pointed to a deep-cover operative planted years ago, trained to wait, observe, blend in. In the interrogation room, the truth cracked open. A photograph slid across the table. A young intelligence cadet in uniform, Nikolai Varanov, trained by the Eastern Syndicates. Covert Operations Academy. Mercer looked at it for a long time, then whispered, his name died long before I arrived here. And just like that, his American facade shattered. The trial that followed stunned journalists and historians. Varanov had transmitted 94 classified documents. He'd been in place for nearly a decade. He'd lived perfectly between two worlds, never fully belonging to either. Lutz confessed quickly, hoping for leniency. Sidorov was expelled under diplomatic immunity. Varanov received 38 years. He was assigned to work, ironically, in the prison's library. Years passed. The Eastern Syndicate dissolved in 1991. Varanov watched its flag lowered on a smudged prison television. A single tear slid down his cheek. He whispered to a nearby inmate, I destroyed my life serving a nation that died without me. Varanov died in 2020 alone in the library stacks, buried under a simple marker with his real name, used publicly for the first time. Kinley, the professor whose suspicion started everything, died years earlier never knowing the full scale of the network he uncovered. The archives hired a new clerk within weeks. They found Mercer's old notes, organized with fastidious care. He had genuinely loved knowledge, even if everything else had been a lie. If you enjoyed this story, the next one will shake you even more. Subscribe so you don't miss what's coming next. Leave a like, a comment, and share this video with someone who loves Cold War mysteries.